can visually look at that. So now I will share and we can talk about, I haven't done quarterbacks yet, but I have done, and I was just doing this data. Okay, there you are. So this is RBs, the percent, and I call it green because that's what I colorize the top 40% or above. Yellow is 20 to 39%, and no color is below 20%. So tight ends and wide receivers. So if you look at 2015 to 23, you can see some trends. And here, let's start with our box. And this is what I was looking at. This in blue here, this is the RBs. Look at the variation versus the tight ends versus the wide receivers. So probably not surprising. We've seen it different ways. RBs are more variable as a position than wide receivers. I think everybody should acknowledge that, Dennis. Every way I see injuries, everything else combines with that data. But here's the actual box and whisker here. But look at tight ends. You talk about the floor to the ceiling. They have the best. They're because that elite tight end is something. It's like there's something so rare as a tight end. That's why they're worth hunting. And you and I know we've talked about this theme before, even in a draft plan, that you need to decide, do you want one of these elite or not? The box and whisker over 15 to 23, those years, supports that if you can be up there in the elite, you're going to be more elite than running backs and wide receivers relative to each position, right? Not to each other, but just within each position. That means they're more valuable. I think people probably know that. The Hawkinsons, the Kelseys, the Andrews, and maybe this year Laporta, these people, tight ends, have that potential to just knock it out for you at a weekly level too, Dennis. That's what I like about this MVP. I mean, this com data is it's telling you that weekliness, and it's showing if you can grab one of these 2 or 3 elites, man, you got that. You have to back yourself up with the handcuffs. Well, that kind of thing. But that's the box and whisker, Dennis. If you want to comment on what you're seeing here for the com data.
Yeah,
This is the percent last year that carried over to the top this year. So that's just a segment of that population.
Yeah, and the elite of the elite tight ends, once they escape the gravity of the rest of the position,
Yep.
they stay in their own orbit. Even Travis Kelce on an off year last year was still an advantage to have in fantasy football. And that's on his worst year, folks. He had a down year during the fantasy football season, and he was still a special player when you compare him to the rest of the group at his position. So he's gonna be a better value.
He was number 2 last year on com. Number 2.
Number 2 in an off year.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing is, and if
Andrews was number 3. Njoku, don't forget him. He really, look at his career in the low level. Just who Njoku, he's a joke, right? Boy, the last 2 years, not so. Evan Ingram woke up, right? Ferguson, look at Laporta as a rookie starting out at 59. Okay. That's just fantastic. You don't see a lot of that. What you see, some of these, is a lot of these rookies have they're buried and then all of a sudden they pop. It's rare that, they just wake up. You look at Andrews, his first year, 2018, 13%. Next year, he's elite. Okay. Look at Hawkinson, first year, 8%. Next year, 2020, elite. Kelsey's so old that he's passed my data, Dennis. Okay. So look at Njoku, 5 years, nothing. Then 2 elite years. Evan
Wow.
Ingram has always been 5 years elite, 2 years next level. Still pretty good. So when we look at ADP on top of some of this, I think it's very intriguing because you at least get to know, like, everybody, oh, Cole Kmet had a good year. Yeah, he had 3 kind of years. So at least you're not surprised if there is variation. That's what I've seen, Dennis, in leagues that people, they draft like there is no variation. Like, this is what they were last year. It's like a US Treasury note. It's going to be the same this year. Yes, theoretically that's true, but what happens during war or something dramatic. So nothing's for sure in anything in this world except death and taxes, right? But you can even look at Kittle, 20%, and then he's elite. Last year, he was 56%, still pretty damn good, like number 6 or 7 or 8. That's not bad. And he's going pretty late this year. So, you can look at this data and maybe start thinking about the ADPs and what you're going to get and, what you should get. McBride is interesting, 6%, 22. Last year, he's elite at 47. Kincaid, he was, what was he? He started out 44%. Wow. Laporta, 59. So Kincaid, everybody said, oh, was he higher ranked than Laporta?
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
look at how Laporta was 15% better in consistency last year. So this kind of data can really tell you some things. And like I said, we can look at the tops, how many continued on, and we can look at those metrics, and I've got that data. And for tight ends, last year was one of the worst at 46%. And then the year 67, 44, 44, I'm sorry, 41, 41, 31, 43. So that tells you that on average, about 40, so 4 out of 10 elite tight ends are going to return, but there's 6 that are not. So that can be really tricky. People need to be aware variation exists.
But if you look at the data and you go back to the yearly data, you will see that once a guy establishes himself as the elite of the elite, once he goes over 60% for a career, look at the guys that have gone over 60%, and they rarely drop back down. Even if they
Zach
drop
Ertz
back
did.
down, even if they drop back down, they are
Goddard did.
still okay. They're not going to drop off the face of the earth. Ingram was an exception, and he dealt with some injuries for a couple of years and then was on some bad teams. As soon as he got back over
Well, he woke back
to a
up
decent
last
offense, he
couple.
woke back up.
Yeah.
So, when I look at this tool and I say, okay, once a guy goes over 60%, I feel pretty confident that he's going to back this up, especially if he can do 60% in back-to-back years. So if you look at your back-to-back over 60% guys, they don't let you down.
Hawkinson, Kelsey,
Kittle
Andrews,
dropped.
Njoku,
Yep.
and Ingram.
Yeah,
They
Kittle
were the
dropped.
back-to-back. Yeah.
Yep, Kittle dropped back into the mid 50s.
But
That's
still, that
still
is
that's
so
still
good.
good. That is
Yeah.
still good. So once you go above 60% 2 years in a row, you got my trust as a tight end. Once you are that elite 2 years in a row, Andrews hasn't even made that level yet. He's still really, really good, but he hasn't been over 60% in 2 consecutive years.
No, he's
Kelsey,
had 2021 and 2023 at 76. So
yeah,
his ceiling is awful high, but
very
his
high ceiling.
floor in the 40s and 50s. So, but you're still getting something compared to everybody else. You could get, you forget how rare tight ends, that perform at any level that's consistently on the weekly level is what a treat to have those guys. Andrews,
Eh,
if I could get him, I don't know what his ADP is yet, but whatever it is, I wouldn't turn him down.
Yeah, and that's the key, folks, is you got to come right back to where you are getting these
Yeah,
players
well, yeah,
because
it's all value.
last year you got Kelsey. Yeah, if you wanted Kelsey on your team, you had to grab him
Ooh,
at the end of
first
the first
round.
round.
Yep.
End of the first round, early second at the very, very latest. This year so far, Kelsey is going, it is tight end 2 at pick 37. So that, I mean, we're talking end of the third, start of the
Mm-hmm.
fourth. At that price, I'm loving him. Andrews right now is going 55th. This is in one QB leagues.
Yep.
So 55th. I mean, we're talking a guy who's going in the 5th round
Mm-hmm.
and is almost as valuable as Laporta going 25 picks
So,
earlier.
so Dennis, you had seen this. I actually pulled from the Fantasy Pros their ADP. Actually, it's my first time through it. I've actually got figures that I thought we would transition to. And let's see if I can get to the actual figures here. So, uh, this, what you're seeing on your screen, and I'm still recording this for folks, Dennis. I hope I still am. Uh, it's hard to tell, but I think I'm still recording. Uh, this is from the first pick to 252nd pick in best ball ADP, which is pretty close. There's some things to think about. Look, tight ends, the best one, Reporta, is third round. Your quarterback, Josh Allen, second round. I can just, some of these, and you can start seeing what's going where, Dennis. And I like to look at everything by this metric here, this draft patterns. This is, folks, when you're getting ready for draft, please use this or get your own. You need to see where the draft is going. And I think if we go to rounds 1 to 4, Dennis, I'll circle in and you can see what's going on. First round this year, it's all about the wide receivers in May. Look at that. We're talking 8 and only
Wow.
4 RB, no tight ends this year at all. So you will get the treat of getting an elite tight end in the third round right now. That is such an advantage. Uh, we haven't seen that in a while. Usually, Kelsey and Andrews, I think the year before, were going in the second round. That means you can get WRWR or RBWR or RBRB or however you want to mix and match in the first two. You can pretty much get those and then grab the second best quarterback or a first best tight end if you want. And
And
these little orange thing, that's the end of the 12th. So the WR2s start in the end of the second round. That's what that means, that little divider. And by round 4, you've gone through 24, 25, 26 wide receivers are drafted. That is so crazy. And yet only 12, 13, 14 RBs are taken round 4. We've never seen this year, to be so biased to the wide receivers. So your plans need to include how you want to handle this. I don't care how you handle it. My issue would be if I'm deep into the draft, 10, 11, 12, am I getting the 8th best wide receiver or the 4th, 3rd, whatever best RB? You've got to make that decision and you've got to decide what you want, Dennis. So that's
A-
why I have these patterns. And here are the
And
actual names in
yeah,
the
and
first.
looking at the data and seeing the percentages that you fall off in value at each position, like
Yep.
we do with our weekly value ratings,
Yep.
this is valuable because if I get past it, first of all, this is the first time in a long time I've agreed with the ADP so far that
That's
there are
bad though, because we
four
because we
viable, yeah,
yeah,
four
we've got to
viable,
figure a
right,
way to beat that ADP. Yeah.
four viable running backs in the first round. I agree with all four of them. I think I don't have an argument with any of those four. But the one thing I will say is one guy who might be flirting with that, but is going in the second round is Jonathan Taylor. I think if he stays healthy, he has a huge year. But when I look at a list like this, obviously CMC, he's
Yep.
safe. CeeDee
Yep.
Lamb, safe. Hill, safe. Chase, safe. Jefferson, quarterback
Mm,
issue.
yeah.
I'm not so sure I want to take a guy at 5, number 5
Versus
pick
Brees Hall or
versus Brees
Bijan
Hall,
Robinson,
Bijan
who
Robinson,
you're gonna
or
put money
Amon-Ra or Amon-Ra St. Brown,
or
who
there you go.
I can make a case for him being the second or third best wide receiver this year. Um, Puka's safe at that spot. Ninth is good for him. AJ Brown, I'm a little bit worried. His weekly values, he never really dominates in the weekly value statistical tools that I look at. He's really good, but he's not seventh best at the position. He's
Yep.
usually down about 10th to 12th. So you're getting him a little bit above his price. Garrett Wilson, everybody's betting on him being much, much better with a better quarterback. That's a great argument, but the quarterback is in his 40s. So I'm not so sure that he's a safe pick that early in the second round. Then, or in the first round, I should say, late first round, I think might be a little high for him. I do think Barkley is safe. I do think Taylor is safe at their position. Same with Jamar Gibbs. Kyron Williams, they just drafted another running back with the Rams. I'm a little bit concerned with him that might be drafting him as ceiling. Devontae Adams, worried about him. Always worried about rookies, but I like Marvin Harrison Jr. as the 10th best. Then Olave probably makes sense in that spot. A Shane scares the heck out of me that early. Talented player, but might have trouble staying on the field. And they drafted his replacement. So there's more depth in that Miami backfield than I like to see if I'm grabbing a running back early. And that's the way you have to look at this, though, folks, is you have to look at the ADP and you compare them to your evaluation of a player, but you also take the risk reward because in the first 3 rounds, I want minimal risk. That's why I won't be drafting DJ Moore in the first part of the third round. I won't be drafting Diggs in the early third round. They just have too much risk in that spot. Nico Collins is overpriced, I think. Maybe Debo and Ayuk as well. It gets to that point where I'm probably going to be taking some running backs in those spots, or I'm going to take advantage and overdraft my tight end and get my elite tight end when other people are taking the DJ Moores of the world. because I think Laporta would give me a better chance of winning if I took him in the late second round
You
than
can get him
I
in the
would get
third.
out of. Yeah, I could get him early third, but if I have to take him late second over Nico Collins, Deebo Samuels, Ayuk, I'm probably doing it. And I'm probably
Well, the
doing it
debate is,
maybe
do you
taking.
take Allen or do you take Laporta? I mean, you have an option in your
Yes.
draft. You get a stud,
Eh,
something, RBWR. You could grab a QB and you might be able to come back with the Kelsey or Laporta. You know what I'm saying, Dennis? You could almost get
yes.
three Hoss players in each position this year, right now, today.
And that's how I strategize for my draft is I say, okay, which are the 4 quarterbacks I want on my roster? I look at their ADP and I fit that with my draft position. And I say, okay, this is my strategy. I strategize more of where I'm taking my elite quarterback and my elite tight end than I strategize at any other position because every other position I have multiple choices. So for my first wide receiver, my most elite wide receiver, I've got about 5 choices that I'm happy with.
Yep.
CD Lamb, Hill, Chase, Amon-Ra St.
Probably
Brown,
Brown. Yep.
Puka.
Yep.
Puka. Those are my guys that I'm really
If you got an
confident
early
in.
draft pick,
Eh,
if you're one,
Correct.
you're getting CMC, right? You're not taking Lamb. See, that's a debate. People are going to debate
I
that,
might I might take Tyreek Hill with the
or
number
whatever.
1 pick
Hill,
because I
yeah,
think he's got
whatever.
another great year.
Yeah.
I think he's got another great year. I can make a case for Breece Hall being the number 1 running back.
But I'm
I can make a
saying you
case for
need to
Bijan
plan.
Robinson.
Yeah, but I think
Correct.
people need to plan. How are you going to figure this out? And that's why I think look at your draft diary. How's it worked out? Are you great at RBs? Then maybe you can find you a later RB and take you a WR. I mean, you just need to figure out what your strengths are and play to that. This kind of stuff that uh, I'll put up out there. In fact, I will probably do a lesson plan through this. Dennis and I don't have time to go through. I've got this metrics, Dennis, to the 12th round, and I use color. Don't you like the color? I
I like the color.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a data artist. Okay, folks, I'm just not black and white. I love because I can take this data in a draft and I can look quickly. Okay, what's coming up next? Oh, there's a QB coming up, or there's whatever. And then let's just talk about QBs for a second. My ADP end of the season metrics lessons, it says round 6 is about the last QB that you want to have by the stats. And notice the public is getting right here. Kyler Murray is 7th round, but pretty early. So it's almost Dak Prescott is kind of that's the edge. The data says you want to grab one of these, that kind of thing. So you folks, you could look at my ADP end of the season historic, and I got hours of that, more than you want to hear me running my mouth. I know we don't talk enough on our podcast. I know I don't, but anyway, you can't. Yeah, Dennis, he's such a quiet church mouse, sits in the corner, barely hear anything from him. Folks, this kind of stuff here is what I have before I even set up. And by the way, I'm always about that slow draft. I like 6 hours, 2 at least, but 6. Now, come late August when I'm running out of time, you know, I can take live, but I'll know things by then. I'll be so far ahead. But anyway, Dennis, I've got these metrics. I know what I need to know. The decisions in the first 4, 6 rounds QBs for me. If I miss on Allen, I'm going to have that debate. I'm probably, if you said, okay, which one, Prescott or Murray, I'm probably grabbing Prescott because got Lamb. But that may be the last QB. With that said, right down here is Brock Purdy, 8th round. And you wonder, why does the public see basically a round difference between Murray and Purdy? That's the kind of deeper questions that you can ask. Why do tight ends play out, for instance, after Evan Ingram, and then you have a draft round, and then Brock Bowers? Is that really something? Is the public right on this, that we, round 7, don't draft a tight end? You just need to know what's going on so you're not surprised. You don't want to wake up round 8, oh, I guess I better grab a quarterback now. You should have that plan already, folks. You should not be tricked and bamboozled at all here. And Dennis, I'll have the complete, my running my mouth. I know I've been talking a lot here, but this is data you hadn't even seen here. So is there any other rounds you want to look at the names in rounds 5 to 8?
I'm
Or did
actually
you wanna,
curious. I'm curious to see where Jalen Hurts comes in
he's
right
number
now
2.
because
He's in the 3rd round. Look
he's
at
in the
him.
3rd round. Okay. So
Almost
that's
4th round.
okay.
So
Well, that's and that's the
if I
way.
miss Allen, then the debate, according to the public, Hurts is probably better than Jackson, Mahomes, and Stroud. That in the
eh,
4th round.
Yeah, and the
What's
way
your
I
next pick? Yeah.
yeah, the way I typically do my draft is I look at the elite at running back and wide receiver.
Yep.
And those are the guys in my list of elite. And it's funny because everybody has a different definition for elite. For my elite, it's the MVP guys that are over 100. Like I want guys that are consistently scoring a big number and rarely putting up a bad number for me. And that list is usually pretty small each year of the guys that I feel are safe, because last year Kyron Williams was on that list, but this year I'm a little bit suspect. It doesn't mean I am down on the player, doesn't mean I'm not drafting the player.
Mm-hmm.
It just means at his ADP, he carries a little more risk than he did last year when he was basically free.
Mm-hmm.
So what I look for as I build this draft for myself, as I'm going into my draft game plan, I circle the 5 quarterbacks and the 3 tight ends that would be in my ideal draft. And I know where they're going to go with some degree of accuracy. Yep. Because people do hold to that ADP fairly well. And if they don't, and I lose a player, I'm fine with that because I've got 5 quarterbacks that I consider elite, and I've got 3 tight ends. It's down to 3 because Hawkinson's injured and may not be ready to go. That doesn't mean I won't take him at some point in the draft if I've got a speculative pick to make, because his upside when he does play is going to be fantastic as always.
Yeah,
So
Dennis, he's going, where is he going? Komet, Schultz, Goddard, Hawkinson is down at 120.
Yeah,
120.
at 120, I'm taking him every time.
That's the 10th round. You
10th
can
round,
find a streamer, right? And shoehorn a Komet or a Schultz or Ferguson. Somebody get you through a few weeks if he's going to come back, say, in the first 3 or 4 weeks. We just need to know a timetable for him, I think, to really execute that. Imagine he comes back halfway through. Game 8. Are you still taking him there?
Yes, because in the fantasy football playoffs, he's going to give me an advantage.
Okay. The weekly advantage. I got it.
He's going to give me a weekly advantage in the fantasy football playoffs. I just have to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah.
cash that chip in. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to bet on him solely and then stream around him. If I grab TJ Hawkinson, I've got another really good tight end up my sleeve. And the strategy I'm thinking of using this year is to take Kittle and Hawkinson at tight end
and
and
stream bounce them back and forth.
Riding out the injury and hoping that Kittle stays healthy for the first half.
And I think our DAPS and some of the other secret stuff that I've been hatching, I think we'll be able to have a little better on your lineup decisions. I want to think, Dennis, based on all the secret work that I've done, that we're going to be doing much better in making some of these tough calls. And so that would give us an advantage in a streaming situations like you just envisioned.
So that's the strategy that I'm using at tight end this year. If I can't get Laporta, and I can't get Kelsey, because those are the top two guys that I would want to have on my team. Andrews would be third. Okay. And then in fourth, it's basically Kittle. I want Kittle.
And notice they've got Kincaid right there with Andrews. Is that too close for Kincaid?
Kincaid had a good season, and he may not have
not a great season compared to Laporta.
Correct. So,
but he was in the top.
He was in the top, and he came on at the end of the season. And I love to see that in rookies as we head into the following year. I'm a little bit concerned about Trey McBride this year. He finished great, had a fabulous season. When you look at the second 2/3 of the season, he was unbelievable. But Arizona didn't have anything at wide receiver last year. This year, they've got the top rookie wide receiver. I gotta believe the McBride, that's gonna cut into his numbers.
Here's what I've been thinking about that question. I want to think that they may overplay. Well, it depends on the coach, but I could see them over feeding Harrison early and maybe, not as, successful. And then McBride might come up and feast a little more. So he might step up a little bit in midseason. So he may be at a nice level later in your playoffs. That would be one, so you have to think of scenarios. That's one scenario. But if Harrison catches on, I don't know if McBride's going to get a big seat at the table as you're predicting. That's your scenario.
Correct. I think it's possible that we don't see a big increase from him this year. So we see him stay stagnant or maybe drop by a few percent. But, he had a fabulous season last year. There's no way around that. So I don't expect it. I'm not saying the guy's going to be a bust. What I'm saying is at his ADP, he might not be as valuable as other guys at their ADP, because if I can get Kittle cheaper,
and you can,
I get a Kittle Hawkinson combo cheaper. That means I probably added another running back and wide receiver. They're going to have a big impact on my team, and a bigger impact than if I had taken Trey McBride and passed on a running back or a wide receiver with that pick. That's the way you have to look at how you're building your draft. It's not a case of, I don't like this player. It's that I don't think he's going to get any better. And I think he could actually tail off a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if he's closer to the 6th or 7th best tight end than top 3 or 4 where he's being drafted. That's my concern for Trey McBride. I just think there are better values out there. And that's the way I try to play the game, is I try to get the best value when I can. But if I get to that point in the draft, Professor, where I don't like any of the running backs or wide receivers a whole lot more, and I haven't added my elite tight end or my elite quarterback, that's when I dip into those markets.
Yep.
And that's kind of been a strategy, again, going back to the draft diary, that has done me well over the last 3 or 4 seasons, when it has become more advantageous to have both an elite quarterback and an elite tight end. For many years in fantasy football, Professor,
Mhm.
I would take one elite player at quarterback or tight end. I would never have an elite quarterback and an elite tight end. But over the last 3 to 4 seasons, I've evolved as the weekly value of quarterbacks and tight ends has gone up. The elite have separated themselves off the top of the chart. And
Yep.
if you're not taking advantage of those guys above the top of the chart, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage each and every week. So in the past, I was willing to take a quarterback or a tight end that was in the median group, because I wasn't losing as many points. But now I am losing too many points, and I'd rather patch and fill at running back and wide receiver and let those positions beat me, rather than let an elite quarterback and an elite tight end beat me.
Gotcha. I look historically, here's another and we'll probably circle back around. We probably should do position by position. It's, we're just kind of throwing everything right now. It's early. Historically, round 6 has been of intriguing interest to me in RBs, and round 8 and 9 historically have been a little higher, a little uptick in what you got versus what you paid. And I was just thinking about that, and I'm thinking, well, who's going in round 6? Kamara up here in round 5? Is that,
Wow.
am I missing something there? To me, if I could wait, I mean, look how close he is to round 6. That's almost like worth wait. I mean, if he drops to round 6, how much of value is it now at 59 versus at 61, 2 or 3 for Kamara? I don't understand what's going on with him.
Yeah, that's one that I don't understand, because using my metrics, he was about the 5th best
Yeah, and there
running
he
back,
is,
and was
sitting right there.
just a shade behind Breece Hall,
Yep,
and was
and
even with Jamar Gibbs. And look at where these guys are being drafted.
yep.
And I got news for folks. New Orleans didn't add a running back
No,
of
they
any
didn't.
consequence. So Kendra Miller is the guy that's going to keep Kamara
Jamal,
off the
was it
field,
Jamal
or Jamal
Williams?
Williams. Yeah.
They didn't use him a lot. I drafted a lot of him last year because I really thought that maybe they were going to save Kamara, give him a little breather. And I didn't see that. It's like they were just pushing Kamara all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I look at the advantages in ADP, and I say, these are the guys that I want to exploit. Joe Mixon is
Yeah.
another
Look at that.
guy
He's up there
who
mid 5, mid
mid
5.
mid 5th round, and he's right there with guys that are going well above him. So
Look at Tony Pollard right here. He's in end of round 7. I mean, he could pass catch. Is
he
Henry
can
still with Tennessee? I forgot.
no
Oh, he's
Henry's
gone.
over in Baltimore now. So
Okay,
yeah,
so Pollard might be a 1-2. He could be an all or nothing kind of guy then in Tennessee.
it's
They
going to be interesting to see who gets the majority of the touches there. Will it be him? Will it be Tyjae Spears?
yeah.
Will it be an even split? And the problem that you get into is it's a different coaching staff with
Yeah, so we
Tennessee
don't
this
know
year.
yet. Yeah.
So you're kind of like, I'm not sure
And,
what's
and
going to
and
happen.
take a look at round 7 and 8, Dennis. Look at the number of RBs in this area. It's like pretty lean rounds 5 and 6. There's what, 5? Over here is double that, 7 and 8. So there's the public's kind of cutting the cake there and separating it out a little bit. So
Yeah,
that's interesting.
and there will be some guys, and the way I look at this is
Look at Eckler. Eckler's down there, round 8.
yeah, and that's crazy because he's a guy that I will take a chance on, because even when he had
He
his
could be your
worst,
third or fourth RB. Can you
yes.
imagine? Who'd you draft? I got Eckler's my fourth RB. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the only guy keeping him off the field is Brian Robinson. So, they've got Chris Rodriguez, who barely played last year, and they
I
got
think
Brian
Eckler could
Robinson.
be a good third down pass catching guy, and he might make your living at round 8. He might be a hero at round 8
Yeah, he's
for
going to
you.
be a guy that I will end up with a lot of him on my roster if he continues to go that late, because there's guys that, quite frankly, that'll be going earlier that I don't trust. So I will probably go a different position at
Mhm.
that point in the draft.
Look at
And
Connor. Connor.
yeah,
Look at Swift. I mean,
and
this to me looks
yeah,
like, man, this is a shopping list of who I might want.
yeah, and that's where I think there's going to be some great values to be had this year at the running back position, because people are ignoring guys.
Well, they're starting off, Dennis. And like I said, if you look at this pattern that I present, I love my little circles and rounds here. So, round 6, starting round 5, we're RB 15, WR 27s are already. So you can see the landmarks of where things are in each group of 4. Round
Eh,
9, yeah, it's RB 32. So you're getting probably some strong handcuffs in round 9 here. That kind of thing. So you need to use these patterns to start asking questions, not making decisions, because it's all value, right? You never know. They're crazy people in crazy leagues right now, but at least you know kind of the pattern that's going on average.
and if I get an elite quarterback, an elite tight end, and 3 really good wide receivers, my better than zero strategy says take a lot of running backs. So
How about Nick
it's
Chubb at
oh
round
Nick
9?
Nick Chubb is
How about
he's
Brian Robinson, round 9,
yep,
Washington? We just
Chase
talked about
Brown.
Kettler.
Yep, Chase Brown is down there
Sure is.
as well. Jalen Wright, from the rookie that went to Miami, is going to go that late. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that will be go. I've got another one for you. How about Ezekiel Elliott finding the fountain of youth and being valuable compared to his ADP? There's a lot of guys at running back every year who go much later in the draft than they should,
Yep.
that I will be mining based on
And,
opportunity.
and so, just to let folks know what I will be doing for the site eventually is I will be doing team by team as we look at ADP and hopefully some of our best metrics and MVP and in other words, I would love to have all that team by team. So now you can ask, well, what do you think is the team going to run this year? Okay, what do we got there? What's the ADP? And I think that can help you spot bargains as well. Because I think people forget team by team in making decisions and plans. I think
Yeah,
that can help.
definitely will be, because when you look team by team, there might only be 7 or 8 really safe running backs.
Yes.
Okay. And so the strategy needs to be draft more of them, not just, hey, if I didn't get those 7 or 8 guys
Yep.
that are safe, I want at least one of them. I
Right.
want at least one elite running back. I want 3 elite wide receivers. And by elite, I mean I want them to be top 20 guys.
Yep.
So if I get that, I've got 3 wide receivers, 1 elite quarterback, 1 elite tight end, and 1 elite running back. I'm going to do okay. And then I can fill out my running backs from a myriad of players and just patch and fill every week, because there's going to be a lot of shared backfield situations. Tyjae Spears and Pollard, we mentioned in Tennessee. Miami,
Eckler and Brian Robinson, Washington.
Oh yeah. And they have different skill sets.
Yes.
So it makes sense. It makes real sense that they will be on the field and share the duty. And as I've told you in the past, Professor, I will not be afraid to start both Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler.
Start them all. I love that strategy.
Start them both on the same team.
Imagine a favorable DAP, and maybe Vegas is liking the matchup. Imagine all that.
Correct. Yep. Those are the kinds of advantages that I will take, because the number of elite running backs entering the season is very, very small. So by having multiple choices in the same backfield on my team, it gives me flexibility to fill out my lineup each and every week. But there are a lot of guys that I'm higher on for various reasons than the public. Ramondre Stevenson is another guy. He had a down year last year. I think he's going to bounce back this year. There are guys that are being overdrafted, like James Cook. I don't think that he's going to be
having a running quarterback. You just, old Allen just liable to take off, and there goes your vulture tied TD right there. It's gone.
And they drafted a bruiser of a running back to handle short yardage work as well. So there are going to be some more shared backfields this year than last year. And there's hard to decipher backfields as well. Shuba Hubbard in Carolina gets Jonathan Brooks, the rookie, the highest drafted rookie, I might add, as the competition. Hubbard was pretty good. He's going to lose touches to Brooks, but does he lose
round 12? I mean, what again? That's the thing. So, folks, you need to dip into this pool. And I'm telling you, Dennis, when we get our composite data with all this team by team, 80, I think some stuff is real. We're probably going to be shocked at some of the value. Doesn't this make you just want to go out and draft the next 24 hours with no sleep about as many best ball teams as you could handle? I'm not going to do that but I'm telling you, folks, I spent time making these figures, and that makes me getting fired up, but it makes me know this data more. This is the first time I've done this, Dennis. We're going to do this all during the summer, you and I. And then I'm going to give you the team by team and whatnot. So we're going to have plenty of, we're going to have more to talk about than we're going to talk about, because Dennis and I talk about an hour of secret stuff before we even get on to record. I'm sorry, folks. We're having fun. We're trying to make a little money, right? We got spouses that have needs that we're having to try to fulfill by fantasy football here, right? We have to slave away at fantasy to keep our spouses happy. So you know why? Because that makes us happy, right? Happy wife, happy life. And that's just the way that game is. But anyway, Dennis, this is, I know we've been talking and talking. Could we talk another hour or two on all this? We really could. I know you got to go. I got to go. But I'm going to have me running my mouth about this stuff coming up as well, these figures, but I thought this would be the first time. And oh, by the way, look at rounds 9 and 10 quarterbacks. You think you couldn't stream somebody with Goff at home and Herbert? You could, I don't know if you could draft both of them, but you might be able to. There's your stream right there. And Kirk Cousins, man, if he's hot, if he can get healed, it could be a miracle down there in Atlanta. I don't like the Dirty Birds, right? I'm a New Orleans fan, but for fantasy, I may have to draft some of him, but I don't know. Certainly in Superflex, he'd be somebody I'd want to. And Baker Mayfield was better than you think last year, folks, round 12, especially in Superflex. I wouldn't, and Aaron Rodgers, boy, that's a tricky one. You think he's even going to play this year? What do you think, Dennis? I don't know.
Yeah, it's really how many games is the key for him,
He might get
and how
tired and
good.
live in a darkened hut for a couple of games, have to pull him out.
It's been since 2021 since we saw him play well. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I don't know.
He's 3 years older. I don't know what to expect, but as a late pick,
Round
he's
11.
kind of a guy. And I played this game before, Professor, where I used to only take one quarterback in a one quarterback league. I've gotten away from that strategy lately, and I am taking multiple quarterbacks on my redraft team. He might be a guy that I take late because he's got obvious upside. But boy, oh boy, it's been a while since we saw him. 2021, his MVP index, 127, which is really good.
People are hoping Garrett Wilson is going to do well, right?
Yep.
Look at Stafford right there with him. And he's got Puka and Cooper Kupp. And he's down here at round 11.
And those are the kinds of quarterbacks that I like to have, because if they're going to support, if you believe in the eliteness of those wide receivers, the guy who's throwing the ball to him every day is also going to be elite. We saw that last year in an unusual way when Joe Burrow went down. Jake Browning ended up
out of nowhere a pretty good year.
Fabulous end of the fantasy football season, and won a lot of folks their playoffs.
Some money. Sure did.
Because he was able to sustain Chase and Higgins as strong wide receivers when they were on the field. So don't be afraid. If you see wide receivers that are early, CeeDee Lamb, the first wide receiver going in drafts, and where is his quarterback going?
Round 6.
That is a value you want to take advantage.
Dak is the last. The data says right there, he's the last one you want is an elite quarterback. That's it. You don't want anybody. You don't want Murray. You want Dak over Murray right there at that 6-7 juncture.
And I believe it indeed. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. The professor will have lots of fun stuff awaiting for you over there. I am working on breaking down teams to look at those advantage positions that you can get as value players in your fantasy football draft. Because remember, folks, after round 7 or 8, I don't care about picking some flops. I am swinging for the fences for upside in my draft the later I go in fantasy football drafts. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all that the professor and I have waiting for you. And come on back here next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.